Hey drawing students, this is Mr. Crayton. So we're going to focus on drawing facial features now as we build towards a portrait project. You remember last year where we focused on drawing facial features like the eyes and nose and mouth and then combining them and using proportions, so setting them up in the right place to create a portrait drawing. Well, the major difference between what we did last year, so stuff like this, is what we're going to do this year. So this year is what we call from the profile. The profile means a side portrait, and the shapes look different. So if you look at the shapes, they clearly look a lot smaller, and we want to focus on breaking down those shapes so that way they're a little bit easier to represent. So even if you look at the eye, yes, the eye is still this round shape. It's actually it is a circle. So you can see it from this side, it actually is a circle. If you can see that shape. But the major difference is when we draw that circle, we only see the piece that's cut in half. So the eye you see is more like a triangle. So we want to represent that triangle shape instead of that almond shape for the eye like we did last year. So that's going to be our major difference. So we're going to, again, represent this triangle shape, which is more like a cone, and it has like this rounded piece on the edge because your eye is round. So for the nose, the shape we want to try to represent is another cone-like shape. So it's, if we forget about kind of like the details of his nose, we're looking at something like this. So it's this rounded triangle that fits on there. And for the lips, what you're seeing for the lips is something that looks almost like a heart. So you have one curve up top and then a bigger curve below, because traditionally, you remember, your bottom lip is a little bit bigger. So we're going to represent these shapes on the face, and then the key is that we just connect them. So of course this, the bridge of your nose connects into your mouth, and then of course your cleft connects into your mouth, and then the bridge of your nose connects back into your head. So we just want to represent those pieces. And so that's going to be the major focus of what we do for our drawing today, is taking those simple shapes. So our circle with the cone over the top, this giant cone, so this giant rounded triangular piece, and connecting that into the bridge, and then connecting the bottom of the nose into the cleft so we can draw this little heart shape for the lips. So we're just going to focus on those super basic shapes to get this thing rolling. All right, so if I actually go to another image here so you can see that, take a look at her face. You can see that on her face. So we have that triangular shape, we have this cone shape, and then you can see that the heart shape for her lips. So if I show you another cartoon image too of that, you can see that very clearly, those very simple shapes here on her face, but we're going to represent it in something a little bit more realistic today. So that's how we'll break that down. So we'll start this drawing. So you can date your sketchbook like you normally would. So like we've done in the past, you can write down the date. Actually, I'm going to flip this way a little bit. Boom. So hopefully you can see those two things together. All right, so leave a little gap from the edge of your paper. Maybe you just start by drawing a circle. So again, in this case, the eye is circular. So it is a ball. And like we've done in the past, just go around until you get it round. That's the key. Just go around until you create a rounded shape. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to cut out a triangle. So when we draw this triangle piece, so I'm actually using my HB right now because we need something that's not super dark. So an HB will easily give you the line work to get this drawing started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rounded You guys can see that a little bit. This rounded triangular piece. So you can just keep it pretty straight just to start. I'm just going to go cut down. And then go back to the edge. So that gives you something to start with. And then you can kind of round over the top of that. So there's a curvature to it. It's kind of like when you draw the light bulb. Any lines on the inside will be curved because your eyeball's curved. So there's a slight curve in there. And then you have the edge. So then what you'll notice is your eyeball, so when you look at the lens of it, so like your pupil and your iris and stuff like that, it's right next to the edge. It doesn't hit the edge exactly, but it's really close. So we're just going to draw like an oval shape. That's super close to the edge. And then a lot of times you'll see the inside pieces. So we can see a little bit of reflected light here. And then also our pupil. So the iris is where the color's at. Pupil is that dark lens, which takes in the light. So it looks kind of like that from the side. So I know that looks weird. It looks like some type of, like a monster or something, just like a giant eyeball. But then what we want to do is we want to come in and add the details over the top. So you do have you have an eyelid. So we'll draw that top piece there. So like these curved lines that curve back. And there you can see a little bit of the bottom lid too as well. So what makes this thing work, again, I know it looks super weird right now. What's going to make this work is we're actually going to add a little bit of the edge of the face so you can tell where this eye is. So what you don't want to do, this is what a lot of amateur students do, is they'll draw an eye like this, and they'll put it right on the edge of the face. That looks really weird. So if you look at her face, what you notice is there is a slight gap between the edge of the face and actually the eye. So your eye isn't directly on the edge. It's recessed. It sits back a little bit. So what you want to do is let's draw a line and then draw it up a little bit. And then I'm going to bring it back to where the forehead is. So you want that gap in between the edge of the face and where the actual eye is. So do the same thing here. I'm going to leave this gap. And then what we'll do next is we're going to build her eyebrow. Sometimes the eyebrow gets pretty close to the edge of the face. In this case, it does not. So, however, eyebrows is very similar to the eye in regards to it's built on a curve. So if you imagine if you were to draw like a giant curve around the eyebrow is going to sit on top of that. So if you want to even draw like a curve to give yourself like a guide, so give yourself a little bit of space above the eye. So we want to get that shape in. And now for the most part, our major shapes are in. So what we can come in and start doing now is just adding some value around this. So I'll even kind of erase this guy that was originally there. And then we can come in and start adding those smaller details. So for sure, I'm just going to kind of start with my my medium, so HB pencil, and start kind of getting some stuff in here by kind of going over these lines. So typically for a lot of females, the edge of their lids will be darker, especially if they wear makeup, mascara, things like that. So we just want to kind of come in and make that lid darker. We just want to press over it. We can also fill the inside of the eye in with some value too. And again, we will switch pencils eventually. So once we feel like we have some value in here, like we have our medium value set, we can come in and add in darker values. As I look, there aren't a ton of value changes here, but if you look really closely, the front part of her face and forehead's a little bit lighter than the dark part, so we can't block that in. Blocking in just means you separate the darkest parts from the lighter parts. It's just so you kind of know what you're shading and what you're looking at. Anytime you shade, remember you want to, if it's the curve object, you want to shade following a curve. So I'm going to start kind of coming in here. So you can actually, if you want to, you can just kind of use the side of your pencil, kind of make some lines. And even as I shade around her eye, again, it does kind of follow a curve. I'm going to go in here a little bit with that HB and kind of make the lids themselves darker. So especially remember, as we get a little bit further away from light, values get a little bit darker. Even the back of the eye gets a little bit darker because there's less light. So what we can do now, I realize again, the values on her face aren't super dark. We can come in with our next pencil, and that's that 2B, and kind of darken some of these darker areas up. So the more contrast you have in your drawing, the more authentic it's going to be. So that part never really changes. Contrast is an important thing to any successful drawing. So any successful drawing you may have, contrast is going to help make that work a little bit. So I'm just using kind of that 2B to darken up the back of these areas so they stand out a little bit more. All right, that looks like that gives me a range. And then I'm gonna come in with the 6B. I don't really need much of it. Again, her face doesn't get very dark, but it is gonna give me just a little bit more of a value range, just to make the parts that are furthest away from the light just a little bit darker. But again, we don't need much of it because, again, her stuff does not get very dark overall. So what we can do is I'm just going to kind of get some of this stuff blended in here. And then after that gets taken care of, we can add some of the texture pieces. So traditionally, we always do our value, and then we do our texture. So if you have a blending stick, go ahead and use that. And if you don't, you can always use paper towel, tissue paper, toilet paper, typically any paper that's softer will work. I'm going to drag some of this even into the lighter area. All right, so that really gives us what we need as far as that drawing is concerned. So really the last thing we're really going to need to get going here is just get the texture in. And then for the most part, then this drawing is set. So for the textured areas, so I'm just going to kind of take my HB, I'm going to fill in that eyebrow. I'm just going to fill it in so we don't have a bunch of white showing. I'm going to take my 2B over the top here. I'm going to press hard and add some lines. So again, eyebrows are a bunch of individual lines. I'm going to add them so close that it just appears to be dark. Add a few little like smaller baby hairs in the front. So you just follow the shape. So you curve and follow the shape. So if the shape curves back, your lines curve back as well. So we want to kind of go with that. So hopefully you can see that I filled that in. Okay, perfect. We're going to do the same thing on her eyelashes. So I'm just going to show you here. So remember, you do have that cone. So you look at this cone shape. So you do have that. What happens is the eyelashes actually curve. They kind of curve down and up. So you're looking at someone that looks kind of like, let's see if I can show you here. So especially on the edge, they kind of curve down and up. So almost like that. You don't really see them as much at the bottom, but they do curve. They have a nice little curvature to them, especially if eyelashes are long. You can see them fairly clearly. I don't know how well you can see that. But again, they do